Hi everyone, Teacher Janet here. Welcome back to my educational channel on biology. In this video, we'll be discussing Form 4, Subtopic 2.3, Part 1 of the Biology Physism syllabus, entitled The 4 Types of Human Tissues or Animal Tissues. So in this video, we're going to discuss epithelial tissue and muscle tissue. And the two other types of tissue, nerve tissue and connective tissue, will be discussed in the second video. So let's get started. So for a start, let's look at this fun question, which you can answer along the way. Now, what tissue acts like a broom, as shown here, like a broom, to sweep unwanted substances away in the body? What tissue acts like a broom to sweep unwanted substances away in the body? So give the example. All right, so keep this question in mind as we proceed with the lesson. The learning standard for this video is as follows. 2.3 Living processes in multicellular organisms. Cell organization in humans. Our learning standard is 2.4.2 Identify cells, tissues, or organs in an organ system. We'll be focusing on tissues here. All right. So we are going to discuss two types of human tissues in this video. And the human tissues are the epithelial tissue and the muscle tissue. Okay, in this video. This is part 1. And then in the next video, part 2, we will discuss nerve tissue and connective tissue. All right, so all these are human tissues. So let's find out what tissues we are made of. Cell organization in humans, an introduction. Firstly, multicellular organisms such as humans, plants, and animals consist of different types of cells with specific functions. So for example, the human body is made up of many different types of cells like nerve cells, muscle cells, epithelial cells, okay, and these all have different functions. All these cells have different functions to meet the needs of the organism. For example, the organism needs to use muscle cells for movement, right? And epithelial cells to protect the body against injury. So all these cells, different types of cells, they are not disorganized and scattered everywhere. The cells in a multicellular organism are actually organized, very well organized and grouped together and arranged to form tissues, right? So what is a tissue? A tissue is a group of cells that have the same structure and function, and they are arranged together to carry out a specific function. Okay, so this is a past year SPM question. We have to memorize the definition for tissue. Now, for example, here you see a tissue which is known as a type of epithelial tissue. It consists of a group of cells. Here we have 5 cells. All right. Of course, there are usually more than 5 cells, and then this tissue is used for a specific function. Okay, for example, epithelial tissue can be used for protection, or in this case, it could be used to form tubules, tiny tubes, or glands, and so forth. Now, in humans and animals, tissues can be classified into 4 different types. Right? So remember, this is for humans and animals, not for plants. All right? The 4 different types of tissues must be remembered. They are the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nerve tissue, and muscle tissue. So we can form a short memory aid with this. Think of the word economy. E for epithelial tissue, C for connective tissue, N for nerve tissue, M for muscle tissue. The short form is economy. Just take the E, C, N, and M out. Now, the first one, epithelial tissue, A, epithelial tissue, and D, muscle tissue, will be discussed in this video, and connective tissue and nerve tissue will be discussed in the next video. So firstly, let's look at a very useful overview of the 4 types of animal tissues or human tissues, right? So the 4 types of human or animal tissues are A, epithelial tissue, B, muscle tissue, C, connective tissue, and D, nerve tissue. And we can use the short form economy, okay, E, C, and M for the 4 different types of human or animal tissues. For this video, we'll discuss A and B. In this video, we'll discuss A, epithelial tissue, and B, muscle tissue. So let's look at all these tissues briefly first. Now, epithelial tissue can be divided into a few different types based on their shapes or their structure, right? So the first type of epithelial tissue is called the flat type. or the squamous epithelial tissue. So the scientific name is squamous, but for KSSM syllabus, we do not need to know this. We just know it as a flat, flat type of cells in this type of epithelial tissue. So this type of epithelial tissue consists of flat epithelial cells. Look something like a pancake, right? Now, cuboidal epithelial tissue is made up of cells that are cube-shaped, or if you cut through a section of it, it will look like squares, right? Now, the next one is the columnar epithelial tissue. It is tall and looks a bit thinner. Okay, the height is longer than the width. Okay, so it looks like columns or pillars. Next is the ciliated epithelial tissue. So it still looks tall, but the cells look tall and narrow. But these type of cells are special in that they have cilia or hair-like projections at the top. They can move. Now the last type is the simple or stratified epithelial tissue. So this is another way of categorizing or dividing the epithelial tissues, okay, into two types. Simple means one single layer of cells, like all this here, okay. Stratified means that the epithelial tissue consists of more than one layer of cells, so many layers of cells, all stacked on top of one another. That is the stratified epithelial tissue. Now next we go on to muscle tissue. Very briefly, there are three types of muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle tissue that is attached to bones or skeleton, the skeleton. Smooth muscle tissue that is found in the walls of the hollow organs, like the stomach, the intestines, and also the arteries and veins. Then we have the cardiac muscle tissue that's found in the walls of the heart. Next is the connective tissue. So there are many types of connective tissue that links the parts together, links the organs or different tissues together, such as, firstly, the loose connective tissue. CT stands for connective tissue. Then the fibrous connective tissue, namely the tendons and the ligaments. Next is the supportive connective tissue, which supports the body, and these are the cartilage and bone. Adipose tissue is the next one. This stores fats. Consists of cells that store fats. Now, fluid connective tissue are the connective tissues that are in the form of fluids, such as blood and lymph. Now, lastly, we have the nerve tissue. Okay, so let's start by discussing epithelial tissue, followed by muscle tissue in this video. Now, in the second overview here, we'll discuss the functions, the general functions of the four types of animal tissues or human tissues. Epithelial tissue is important for protection against injuries. For example, the epithelial tissue on the skin, right? Protection against injuries and entry of germs or pathogens, okay? Protect against infections. Now, it is also used for diffusion. For example, diffusion of gases through the alveoli or alveolus in the lungs. Thirdly, it's used for absorption. For example, absorption of food substances in the small intestine. And lastly, for secretion. For example, secretion of enzymes and sweat, okay, from the glands. Okay, muscle tissue is important for movement. For example, movement of body parts like arms and legs, and also for locomotion. That means where the organism moves from one place to another. Now, connective tissue is important for support, such as cartilage and bone, for binding together different tissues. And for example, these are the tendons and ligaments, and then it links organs together. And the fluid connective tissue, like blood, helps to transport nutrients like oxygen and glucose, all right, to the cells. Then nerve tissue is important for coordination of body activities, so that it can respond to stimuli also, and then it can help to integrate the activities of the different parts of the body, right? So for coordination. And then it helps to control body activities. For example, the brain, all right, is made up of nerve tissue, okay, and the brain helps to control body activities. So this overview shows you the location of the different types of tissues and the structure of some of these tissues, okay. For example, epithelial tissue. It is found in the lining of the GI tract organs. GI means the gastrointestinal tract or the digestive system, right? So it's found in the lining of the stomach. Okay, it covers the inner surface of the stomach, the intestines, and so forth. And other hollow organs, even the blood vessels, it covers the surface, the inner surface of the blood vessels, like capillaries, and arteries, and veins. And it's found on the skin surface, which is called the epidermis, right, for protection. So this is one example of an epithelial tissue that's made up of many layers of cells, of epithelial cells. Okay, now muscle tissue, the second one. Muscle tissue is found in the different parts of the body. For example, cardiac muscle tissue is found in the heart. Smooth muscle tissue is found in the hollow organs, such as the stomach, the intestines, the esophagus, blood vessels, and so forth, and they can help the organs to contract and relax. Okay. Then the skeletal muscle tissue is always found attached to the bones, all right, to bring about movement of the body parts. When the muscle contracts, then it will pull the bones. Okay. Then the parts of the body can move. So next we have the nerve tissue. So nerve tissue is found in the brain, the spinal cord, and also it forms the nerves, all right, that extend to all the parts of the body, all right, to carry impulses to all the parts of the body, and from to carry impulses also back to the brain, right, to coordinate body movements and control the activities of the body. Now, next we have the connective tissue. So there are many different types of connective tissue. One is the fat, all right? That means the adipose tissue that stores fat, okay? Now, bone is also a connective tissue that helps in support. And tendons. Tendons are connective tissues that connects the bone to the muscles, right? So let's discuss the first type of human or animal tissue, and this is the epithelial tissue. We will be discussing the types of epithelial tissue, the structure of each type of epithelial tissue, the location for each type of epithelial tissue, and finally the adaptations for its function, for its specific function. Right? So these are what you need to know for the syllabus and the exam. So let's discuss epithelial tissues. Where's the location? Now, epithelial tissues, the word epi means on top, on the surface. So epithelial tissues cover the outer surface, such as the skin, the surface of the skin of the body. Okay, so all over our body, on the surface of the body, is a layer of skin, and the outermost layer of the skin is the epithelial tissue. Okay, but other than covering the outer surface of the body, epithelial tissues also line the inner surfaces of body cavities and hollow organs, such as the digestive tract and such as the mouth, esophagus, and intestines, right? And also the stomach. So the inner surfaces also are covered by a layer of epithelial tissues. Okay, so it can be one cell thick or many cells thick also. Okay, depending on the type of epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissues cover the outer surface and inner surfaces of the body. Okay, so in the respiratory tract here also, the inner surface of the trachea, we also have epithelial tissues, right? So stomach, inner surface of the stomach, intestines, all covered by a layer of epithelial tissues, as seen here. And in the center, there will be the hollow cavity or the lumen, okay, where substances may be found. Okay, so functions. because it covers the surfaces of the body. It will protect the body surfaces. Okay, so it's for protection against injury or against the um, infections, against entry of germs or pathogens, disease-causing microorganisms, and so forth. Now, it's also for the absorption of food. So certain types of epithelial tissues, especially in the intestine, small intestines, are adapted to absorb food substances that have been digested, okay, digested food substances. And also in the lungs, the epithelial tissue in the alveoli allows the diffusion of gases like oxygen from the alveoli into the blood. Now, lastly, another important function is for secretion. If some epithelial tissues form glands that can secrete mucus, enzymes, or hormones. Examples are sweat glands and salivary glands, okay, that secrete certain substances. Sweat glands secrete sweat, salivary glands secrete saliva. Now, the structure. The structure of an epithelial tissue is adapted for its function. So this is quite important, all right, and quite interesting to know how is an epithelial tissue adapted for its function. So different types of epithelial tissues will have different adaptations based on their functions and their locations. Now, here are two examples. Examples of different structures of epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissue on the skin, epithelial tissue on the skin has many layers of epithelial cells to protect against infections, injuries, chemicals, and dehydration. Okay, so because there are many layers of epithelial cells, if the top layer is worn off, there are still layers underneath to protect the underlying parts. Now, epithelial tissue that coats the trachea, in the inner part of the trachea, have cilia, as you can see here, which are hair-like projections that can sweep mucus with dust particles out of the trachea, okay, into the upper part of the body, which is in the throat, so that the mucus that contains the dust particles can be coughed out. Let's find out more. So let's refer to our first overview again on the 4 types of animal or human tissues. Now we're going to study epithelial tissue. So just a recap, epithelial tissue can be divided into a few types based on their shapes or structure. There's the squamous or flat epithelial tissue made up of cells that are flat like a pancake. Now, cuboidal epithelial tissue is made up of cells that are cube-shaped, epithelial cells that are cube-shaped, or if you cut through a cross-section, they look like squares. This can be compared to a Rubik's cube or a dice or a sugar cube. Okay, that is cuboidal in shape. Now, columnar epithelial tissue is made up of cells that are tall and thin-looking like this, like columns. Then ciliated epithelial tissue consists of epithelial cells that have cilia on top. Cilia are hair-like projections that can move to sweep substances away, okay, from certain parts of the body. Now, simple or stratified epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue can be further divided into 2 types. Simple meaning having 1 layer of cells only. Stratified meaning having more than 1 layer of cells, okay, or many layers of cells. Like here, there are 5 layers of cells, okay, stacked on top of one another. Let's find out more. Here's an overview of the different types of epithelial tissues. We'll talk about 5 types of epithelial tissues based on their shape and their arrangement. So the first type is called the simple squamous epithelial tissue. Simple means 1 layer, squamous means flat cells. So this epithelial tissue consists of 1 layer of flat cells. It covers the inner surface of lungs, or SX or alveoli, the body cavities, and the inner surfaces of blood vessels like arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay, so here we see the lungs. It's made up of, the alveoli has this type of tissue, okay, simple squamous epithelial tissue. Now the second type of epithelial tissue is called the stratified squamous epithelial tissue. Stratified means many layers. Squamous means flat cells. So this type of tissue is made up of many layers of flat epithelial cells stacked on top of one another. This type of tissue covers the surface of the skin, inside the mouth, the inner surface of the mouth, and also the inner surface of the esophagus. Next is the simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. So this type of tissue is made up of cells of a different shape. The cells are cuboid in shape. When you cut to the cross section, you see the cells are like square in shape. And This type of tissue lines the tubules or tiny tubes, the glands such as sweat glands, kidney ducts, and bile ducts. So a duct is also like a tube, a small tube here. So this picture here shows you the bile duct, okay? It consists of this type of cuboid cells, all right? Now, number 4, simple columnar epithelial tissue. Okay, this type of tissue consists of cells that are long and tall, and the width is smaller or less than the height. Okay, so this type of epithelial tissue covers the inner surface of the small intestine, and they have microvillus. Plural form is microvilli, right? So some of these cells have microvillus or microvilli to increase the total surface area for absorption of food substances. Another type of cell is called the goblet cell that produces mucus to lubricate the movement of food substances in the small intestine. Now lastly, we have the pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. This type of tissue is made up of cells that are actually in one layer only, but it looks like many layers, all right? That's why it's called pseudo-pic, stratified. So it's like made up of many layers, but actually it's only one layer. Ciliated means that it has cilia. So this type of tissue that's found in the trachea or bronchus is made up of cells, epithelial cells that have cilia or tiny hair-like projections that can sweep substances away, dust particles away, and mucus away from the inner part of the trachea, okay, to the throat. It also contains goblet cells that produce mucus to trap dust particles. Let's discuss each one of these epithelial tissues in more detail. So let's discuss the different types of epithelial tissues in more detail from the aspect of structure, location, and functions. Now, the first type is the simple squamous epithelium. It consists of a single layer of flat epithelial cells. Simple means one layer, single layer, and squamous means flat. Okay, so here we see the picture of the simple squamous epithelium, the cross section or the section through the tissue. And you can see that it's made up of flat cells, a single layer of flat cells. Okay, now this is the three-dimensional picture. You can see here that the simple squamous epithelium is made up of a layer of flat cells like the tiles or bricks on the pavement. Okay, and each cell has a nucleus. So where is it located in? Simple squamous epithelium covers the surface, the inner surface of the lungs. That means the alveoli or SX, inner surfaces of body cavities and of blood vessels like arteries, veins, and blood capillaries. Take the example of the alveolus. Plural form is alveoli. So in the lungs, we can see a lot of these bubble-shaped or SX, which is filled with air, right? So the alveoli or alveolus. Let's look at a section through an alveolus. Okay, it's made up of one layer of epithelial cells here, which are the simple squamous epithelial cells or epithelium. Okay, so what is the function of this type of epithelium? It forms a thin membrane, as in the alveolus here, to allow rapid diffusion of substances such as oxygen through it. Okay, for example, oxygen diffuses very quickly from the alveolus through the simple squamous epithelium into the blood capillaries. Okay, and also the blood capillaries here we can see another layer of the simple squamous epithelium. All right, it's a thin layer, only one layer thick only. So it allows the diffusion of gases like oxygen through it. All right, and also carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will diffuse from the blood into the alveolus through this type of epithelium. Now, secondly, is for the secretion of lubricating substances, and it allows filtration to occur. So this diagram here shows us the simple squamous epithelium, which is a type of epithelial tissue that is found in the lungs or the alveoli, in the body cavities, and also in the inner surfaces of blood vessels, as seen here. All right, this is a cross-section of a blood vessel, like an artery or a vein, and the inner surface of this blood vessel is lined with a layer of epithelial tissues, all right, which is a single layer of cells. Okay, so this is the simple squamous epithelium. Now inside here in the center is the lumen, a hole where the blood flows through. The second type of epithelial tissue is called the stratified squamous epithelium. It is made up of many layers of flat epithelial cells. Stratified meaning many layers, squamous meaning flat. So here's a picture of the stratified squamous epithelium. Here there are 5 layers of cells shown here. And this is the photo micrograph or the photo of the real cells. You can see that there are many layers of these flat epithelial cells, right? So where's the location of this type of epithelium? It covers the surface of the mouth, the inner surface of the mouth, the esophagus, and also the external surface of the body, that is the skin, all right? So all these organs experience a lot of wear and tear, okay, where the upper layers may be worn away, right? So this type of epithelium is important for protection against wear and tear of organs, as there are many layers of cells. If the top layers are brushed away or pushed away or worn away, there will be other layers below it to protect this part of the body. Okay, so for example, if you were to brush the surface of your skin, the cells will come off quite easily, will be sloughed off, right? So, but there are lower layers, there are other layers of epithelial cells underneath, so it will still protect the body, form a barrier to protect the body against entry of microorganisms such as bacteria, okay, and also protect against injuries and also against water loss from this through the skin, okay, water loss from the body, from the inner parts of the body through the skin. So it protects against dehydration because of the many layers of cells. Look at a close-up of a section through the human skin. All right, so the skin is made up of a few parts. The uppermost part is called the epidermis, and the lower part here below here is called the dermis. So the epidermis is the part that contains the epithelial tissue. All right, so this part here, which has a few layers of cells here, right? So you can see here the layers of cells, okay, that can be found in the epidermis, okay, quite a number of layers, and the type of epithelial tissue is stratified squamous epithelium. Now we do not need to memorize this name for KSSM syllabus, okay, but it helps us to understand the structure of the epithelial tissue. It is made up of many layers of epithelial cells, okay. Now take note that the name for this part of the skin is epidermis. It's a specific name. It has nothing to do with the epidermal tissue in plants or the dermal tissue in plants, all right? Okay, so this is for the human or animal skin. The uppermost part is called epidermis, all right? But the type of tissue is epithelial tissue, okay, that is found in the epidermis. The third type of epithelial tissue is called the simple cuboidal epithelium. It consists of a single layer of cube-shaped cells. Simple means one or single layer. Cuboidal means cube-shaped cells. So if you cut a section through this type of epithelium, you find the cells are square in shape, almost square, with the height and the width almost the same, right? And then each cell has a nucleus in the center. So this picture shows you how these cells are used to form the tubule or small tubes, all right, in the kidneys and elsewhere. So where's the location of the simple cuboidal epithelium? Cube-shaped cells, with the cube-shaped cells. They line the tubules. Tubules are small tubes. For example, in the kidney, there are many tubules or small tubes that are used for the formation of urine. Okay. Kidney ducts. Again, duct is like a tube. So in the kidney, there are collecting ducts which collect all the urine from the kidney tubules and channel it to other parts of the body, okay, to the ureter and then down to the bladder. Okay, it also lines glands. So it's used in the formation of glands, such as the salivary glands and the sweat glands. So glands are tissues, epithelial tissues, that can secrete substances such as sweat or saliva or hormones or enzymes. Now, what is the function of this type of epithelium? They form tubules or tiny tubes called nephrons, which you'll study in another chapter, for reabsorption of useful substances from the urine in the kidney. So the kidney is the organ, as you can see here, there each person has two kidneys. The kidney is the organ for the production of urine, that's involved in the production of urine. And in the kidney, there are many of these small little tubules, all right? And here we see the tube, the cross-section through the kidney tubules. There are three tubules here. The center part is hollow. This is for the urine to flow inside, right, during the formation of urine. And you can see the cells lining the tubule are the cube-shaped cells, okay? So this is the simple cuboidal epithelium, okay, that lines the tubes or tubules in the kidney, all right? So these tubules are used for reabsorption of useful substances from the urine in the kidney. So when the urine is flowing in these tubules, certain substances like water, okay, and dissolved substances can be reabsorbed back into the blood beside the tubule here, okay? And this type of epithelium allows the reabsorption of useful substances from the urine back into the blood in the kidney, so that these useful substances are not lost in the and excreted in the urine. Okay. Now, so the second function is that the simple cuboidal epithelium forms glands for secretion of substances. Okay. So as I said, glands are various glands in the body. They are actually formed from the epithelial tissue called the simple cuboidal epithelium, and they secrete substances. For example, sweat glands secrete sweat, and salivary glands secrete saliva. Okay, so this is a picture of the section through the skin, and we see the sweat gland here. Okay, in the skin. So this gland is made up of the simple cuboidal epithelium. All right. The fourth type of epithelial tissue is called the simple columnar epithelium. So this type of epithelium is made up of a single layer of rectangular cells. Okay, simple means one layer. Columnar means rectangular cells that are tall. Okay, they are taller than, the height is higher than the width. The width is shorter than the height here, right? So they look like columns or cylinders, right? Like pillars, in a house, longish in shape. Unlike the cuboidal epithelium or the flat squamous epithelium, right? So this type of epithelium is found covering the inner surface of the digestive tract. Okay, so parts of the digestive tract include the esophagus, but it's not found in the esophagus, this type of tissue. It's found more in the small intestine, where it contains it has epithelial cells which have tiny projections called microvilli or microvillus. Okay, this is the singular form. So what is microvillus? They're tiny projections sticking out from this type of epithelial cells to increase the total surface area for absorption of digested food substances, right? Like glucose and also amino acids. So the small intestine is the site for the absorption of food, right? Of digested food substances such as glucose and amino acids. So it has all this type of epithelium which contains the tiny hair-like tiny projections. All right, these projections cannot move, but they are more to increase the total surface area. All right, for the absorption of digested food substances. Right. So the more microvilli there are, then the bigger the total surface area as compared to just a flat surface. So these projections, as you can see here in this diagram of the cell, you can see the hair-like tiny projections. Okay, these are not to sweep substances, but they are to increase the total surface area for absorption of food. Right? And then we have another type of cell in the epithelium, this type of epithelium, which is called the goblet cell. So what's a goblet cell? Now the shape looks like a bit like a wine glass. That's why it's called a goblet cell. Right? Actually, this part now, which is bulging out, contains a lot of mucus. Okay, as you can see, it produces mucus, which is a sticky substance that is secreted on the surface of the epithelium so that the movement of the food is lubricated. It lubricates the movement, the passage of the food, digested food substances or food substances that are being digested through the digestive tract. Okay, so there are two types of cells in this type of epithelial tissue: the goblet cell and also the cells that are involved in the absorption of food, which contain a lot of microvilli. Right? Singular form is microvillus, plural form is microvilli. Okay, now this part shows you the small intestine, which is used for absorption of food, including the ileum. All right, and they contain, the cells on the surface contain a lot of microvillus, and the type of epithelium is called the simple columnar epithelium. Again, for KSM syllabus, we don't need to remember the name, but you must know the structure, location, and function. The fifth type of epithelial tissue is called the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. It consists of a single layer of rectangular cells of different heights. So pseudo-stratified means that it looks as though there are a few layers of these cells. All right, pseudo means false. All right, so but there's only one layer, a single layer of rectangular cells, as you can see in this picture here. But because the cells are of different heights, some are taller, some are shorter, so it looks as though there are a few layers. All right, so it's called pseudo-stratified. And then these cells are columnar or rectangular in shape. They are tall and thinner. And the location. So when you see cells with the cilia, epithelial cells with the cilia, we know that it is found in the trachea. This type of epithelium lines the inner surface of the respiratory tract, that is the trachea, right? As seen in this diagram here. Now, what is the function of this epithelium? So this epithelium or epithelial tissue consists of two types of cells, the goblet cells and the ciliated cells. Goblet cells labeled with the letter G here, okay, are the cells that produce a mucus, like in the small intestine, which also has goblet cells. All right, so you can see here the goblet cell is broad at the top and then narrows down, okay, like a wine cup. That's why it's called goblet cell. It produces mucus, okay, and in this photograph of the cells, you can see the mucus, the whitish substance here is the mucus. All right, so what is the function of these goblet cells? They secrete mucus, which is a sticky substance, to trap the dust particles from the air. All right, to stick the dust particles onto it from the air, onto the mucus. So the mucus here is not to lubricate the movement of substances, but is to trap the dust particles from the air that is breathed in through the nose. All right. So the air that is breathed in through the nose into the trachea will be filtered when the dust particles are trapped, and then less dust will enter the lungs. All right. Now next we have the second type of cell that works together with the goblet cell. This is the ciliated cell. So ciliated cells have cilia. Cilia are tiny hair-like projections sticking out into the hollow center of the trachea, right? You can see the cilia here. So when you see the cells with cilia, you know it's in the trachea, all right? Because these cilia or hair-like projections can move. So they will sweep the dust particles together with the mucus upwards to the pharynx. If a person is standing up, then the cilia will be at a perpendicular position compared to the trachea, and they will sweep the dust particles upwards to the pharynx, which is in the throat, and then the person will either cough out the mucus or may swallow it into the esophagus. But in this way, the air will be filtered, and the air that enters the lungs are cleaner. Okay, now here you can see goblet cells produce the mucus. Mucus traps the dust particles from the air, and then the cilia will sweep the dust particles and mucus to the pharynx, okay, to be removed. All right, now this position of the cells, the goblet cells and the ciliated cells, are when the person is lying horizontally. But when the person is in a vertical position, then the cilia will be projecting perpendicular to the trachea. Okay. So have you found the answer to the fun question at the beginning of this video? So our question was, what tissue acts like a broom to sweep unwanted substances away in the body, right? This interesting thing is that it is the epithelial tissue in the trachea and the bronchus, okay, the trachea, the windpipe, and the bronchus here, the branches of the trachea, that does this action. So the epithelial tissue is found in the inner lining of the trachea. Okay, and here you see it in a position that is vertical like this, as what you would get if a person is standing up, right? It's in an upright position. So the cilia is found on the surface of the epithelial cells. Now, first we have the goblet cells as seen here with the mucus on it, right? Inside it. So goblet cell will secrete mucus to stick the dust particles together, okay, from the air. And then the cilia on the epithelial cells will then move and sweep the dust particles together with the mucus to upwards to the pharynx or the throat region here, okay, to be coughed out in order to remove the particles from the air and from the body. All right. So our answer is that epithelial tissue in the trachea and bronchus does the action of a broom, like a broom, to sweep unwanted substances away from the body. And here we can also see, you are asked what is the function of the cilia on the epithelial cells. You can write that the cilia on the epithelial cells sweep the mucus and dust particles to the pharynx or throat region to remove the particles, okay, from the air that is breathed into the lungs. Okay, so the action of cilia in the trachea is like that of a broom which sweeps the dust particles away into a dustpan. Now let's test ourselves. Name the type of tissue that forms the sweat glands and salivary glands, right? So type of tissue, it means that for the animal tissues, there are 4 types, right? Think of the word economy. E for epithelial tissue, C for connective tissue, N for nerve tissue, and M for muscle tissue. So which type of tissue is it that forms the glands? Okay, keywords here are the glands, sweat glands and salivary glands. All right, so these are our options, and you can try to answer the question yourself. Take a minute to answer the question yourself. So what is your answer? Now, the right answer is C, right? So glands are formed from epithelial tissue, which is a type of animal tissue, right? And epidermal tissue is found in plants, not in animals. All right, it's epidermal tissue. So this is out. So the answer is C, epithelial tissue. And the type of epithelium is the simple cuboidal epithelium, as we have discussed in the previous slides. Okay, so but for KSSM students, you do not need to know this type of tissue. Okay, just know that glands are formed from epithelial tissues. Now let's go on to B. We'll discuss the second type of animal or human tissue, which is the muscle tissue. We're going to discuss the types of muscle tissue, the structure of the tissues, the location, and the adaptations of the muscle tissue for its function. Now we've already discussed the epithelial tissue and the different types of epithelial tissues. So let's go on to muscle tissue. So there are 3 types of muscle tissues, namely the skeletal muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and smooth muscle tissue. Let's find out more. So an introduction, right, on this topic. So muscle tissues are composed of cells called muscle fibers. Now there are 3 types of muscle tissues. Skeletal muscles, which are found in the legs, arms, and hands, attached to the bones. That's why they're called skeletal, from the word skeleton. They're attached to the skeleton or the bones of the body. Now, secondly, we have the cardiac muscles, which are found only in the walls of the heart and nowhere else. So the third one are the smooth muscles, which are found in the digestive tract, in the walls of the organs such as the esophagus, stomach, and small and large intestines, in the walls of the blood vessels like arteries and veins, in the urinary tract, and the reproductive tract. Let's find out more. So this diagram shows you the overview of the structure of the 3 types of muscle tissues and their location, right? Now, the first type is called the skeletal muscle tissue. and it's attached to the bones. So this is the diagram for it. The skeletal muscle tissue is made up of elongated cells with many nuclei on it, on the edges of the cell, right? As you can see here, on the periphery of the cells. And it has bands or striations, okay, running perpendicular to the length of it. Now, next you have the cardiac muscle tissue found in the walls of the heart. And this is a very important tissue that causes the heart to beat when the cardiac muscles contract and relax, right? So this type of muscle tissue has branches like this. And it's also striated or has bands like the skeletal muscle tissue. Okay, but it's different because there's all these branches on it. All right. Now, the third type of muscle tissue is called the smooth muscle. So it is found in the walls of the digestive tract, the arteries, and the uterus. Okay, it's found in the walls of the hollow organs with a hollow center. And it consists of cells that are spindle shaped, like the eye, like the shape of the eye. As you can see here, longish but spindle shaped, broad at the center here. And each cell has a nucleus each, right? One nucleus each. Okay, so skeletal muscles are found attached to the bones, cardiac muscles are found in the walls of the heart, and the smooth muscles are found in the walls of the digestive tract, arteries, and uterus. The first type of muscle tissue is called the skeletal muscle tissue. It is located near to the bones. It is attached to the bones or skeleton. For example, in the legs and arms. For example, below here we see a picture of the arm. So the upper arm has two muscles, which are the triceps. Below here, this is the triceps, and above it is the biceps. Okay, so when the biceps contracts, the triceps will relax, and then the biceps, through its contraction, will generate a pulling force on the bones. For example, this is the radius, the bone called the radius. So the radius will be pulled by the muscle upwards, and this is how the arm is bent. Okay, so the function of skeletal muscle is that when it contracts and relaxes, it generates movement of bones and limbs, and it can cause the whole body to move too. So this type of movement is called voluntary movements, and the muscle is called voluntary muscle. Right? This type of muscle, skeletal muscle, is a voluntary muscle. Now, what is a voluntary movement or voluntary muscle? They can be controlled by conscious will or the conscious mind. We are aware of it when we are controlling. Okay, we say boleh dikawal secara disedari. Okay, so we will, for example, if you want to take a walk, you can just get up and then start to stretch out your legs, extend out your legs and walk, right? So it's under our conscious control, under the control of the conscious mind. Examples are walking, talking, and writing. Now, this picture shows us the muscle fibers or cells. Here we see 4 muscle fibers, and each one has many nuclei, right? Then one more characteristic is that it has striations or bands or stripes on it, like a zebra, like that. Okay, so this is an important characteristic of the skeletal muscle. Now, this picture shows us the real photograph of the skeletal muscle cells and tissue. Okay, this is one muscle cell or fiber, and this is another one. So the muscle fibers run parallel to each other, right? And you can see here the darker stripes here, right? These are the striations on the muscle fibers, and there are many nuclei here. Okay, you can see many nuclei found on the edges or the periphery of the cell. Okay, so important thing here to note is that it does not have any connection or branches that link the separate muscle cells together, unlike the cardiac muscle cells, as you will find out later. Okay, so cardiac muscle cells have branches that link the parallel muscle fibers, but skeletal muscles, they don't have all these branches or linkages between the muscle fibers. The second type of muscle tissue is called the cardiac muscle tissue. It's located in the walls of the heart only and nowhere else in the body. Okay, so this type of muscle is very special because it can contract and relax to pump blood to the whole body and it works for a lifetime. All right, it contracts and relaxes for the whole life. So the contractions of the cardiac muscles are involuntary actions, meaning it cannot be controlled by our conscious mind. Okay, it's still controlled by the brain, but in a different part of the brain, and that's different from the control of the skeletal muscles. This one, cardiac muscles, they are controlled by a different part of the brain, and they cannot be controlled by conscious will. All right. So cardiac muscles are very important, and they can die if they don't get enough blood supply that contains the oxygen and food substances. Okay, this occurs when the artery that supplies the blood to these cardiac muscles are blocked. If the arteries that supply blood to the cardiac muscles are blocked, then the oxygen and food substances cannot be delivered to the cardiac muscle cells, and the cardiac muscles will die, and the whole heart can stop beating. Right? So this picture shows us the diagram of the structure of the cells. Now you can see that they look a lot like the skeletal muscle tissues, but there's one main difference. They have branching cells here. There are branches that connect the cardiac muscle cells together, right? And then there are bands, like in the skeletal muscle tissues. But take note, if you see these branches, that means this is cardiac muscle tissue, not skeletal muscle tissue. Okay. Furthermore, the nucleus is usually found in the center of each cell, and each long muscle cell has only one nucleus each, right? Usually not at the periphery or edges, but in the center of the cell. So here you can see the photomicrograph, which shows us the real cardiac muscle tissue. You can see the nucleus here, right? And if you look closely, actually there are bands, perpendicular bands on them. Okay, you can see the branches, see the branching cell here, they're interconnected, okay, so that they can all contract together when the nerve impulses from the heart itself arrive at the cardiac muscle tissues. The third and final type of muscle tissue is the smooth muscle tissue. Smooth muscle is located in the walls of the digestive tract, such as the esophagus, stomach, and intestines, in the walls of the urinary tract, reproductive tract, and also in blood vessels such as arteries and veins. So arteries and veins have a layer of the smooth muscle in them. Now the function. Smooth muscle contracts and relaxes to produce involuntary actions, which cannot be controlled by our conscious mind, such as peristalsis in the esophagus and other parts of the digestive tract, and the constriction or narrowing of arteries. All right, so when arteries become narrow, we call that the process of constriction. It is due to the contraction of smooth muscles. Okay, so take note the difference between the word constriction, which means the narrowing of the arteries, and the word contraction. Okay, so smooth muscles do not constrict, they contract to produce cause the constriction of arteries. Now let's talk about peristalsis. What is peristalsis? Let's look further down here now. Peristalsis is defined as the alternate contraction and relaxation of smooth muscles that move substances such as food in places like the digestive tract. Okay, so the word tract here means the tube-like structure or canal where the food is pushed through or the substances are moved through. Now let's take a look at this first diagram here. It shows you the esophagus, which is a long tube that extends from the mouth right down to the stomach. And in the wall of the esophagus, we have the smooth muscles, right? So when the smooth muscles contract above the bolus of food, okay, this bolus means the food, the ball of food that's been swallowed. So when the smooth muscles above the bolus of food contracts, then it will push the food down, all right? Now after that, the smooth muscles here will relax. Then the smooth muscles which are further down, still on the upper part of near the upper part of the bolus. So these smooth muscles above the bolus will then contract to further push the food down, right? And in this way, peristalsis occurs to move the food into the stomach. So let's have a look at the cells, okay, of the smooth muscles. So smooth muscles consist of smooth muscle cells that are spindle-shaped, shaped like the eye, right? with a central nucleus for each cell. Alright, now here in this real photograph of the smooth muscles, we can see the spindle-shaped cells like this one here, and the nucleus looks a bit elongated here, right? All these are smooth muscle cells. Okay, so remember that smooth muscle cells are used in the process of peristalsis and constriction of arteries. Alright, and also know their location. So to summarize about the three types of muscle tissues, here is a table to compare the skeletal muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and smooth muscle tissue, and to find out or be able to state the differences between them in terms of their location, structure, or function. Alright, so skeletal muscle tissues are attached to bones or skeleton. Cardiac muscle tissues are found in the walls of the heart, whereas smooth muscle tissues are found in the walls of the esophagus, stomach, intestines, and blood vessels like arteries and veins. Now, in terms of the structure, skeletal muscle tissue consists of cells that are elongated. Cardiac muscle tissues are made up of branching cells, and smooth muscle tissues are made up of spindle-shaped cells or cells that have the shape like an eye. Now, skeletal muscle tissues consists of cells where each cell has many nuclei. For cardiac muscle tissue, each cardiac muscle cell has one nucleus, and similarly for smooth muscle tissue, each smooth muscle cell has one nucleus. Skeletal muscle tissue has visible bands or striations as seen here, and similarly too for cardiac muscle tissue. It has visible bands or striations. Alright, but for smooth muscle tissue, there are no visible bands or striations in the tissue. Now, from the aspect of their action, right, skeletal muscle tissues or skeletal muscle are called voluntary muscles because they can be controlled by conscious will. Cardiac muscle and smooth muscle instead are called involuntary muscles because they cannot be controlled by the conscious will. So that's all for this lesson. In the next lesson, we are going to discuss the other two types of animal or human tissues, namely nerve tissue and connective tissue. So till we meet again, goodbye for now. Let's test ourselves. Now, question 2. Which of the following statements is true about tissue X as shown in this diagram? A. It helps pump blood to body cells. B. It is involved in the movement of limbs, that means the arms and the legs. C. It carries out peristalsis. D. It helps connect or link different tissues together. So you can pause the video for a while and try to answer the question in 1 minute. Right, what is your answer? Yes, the answer is A. Tissue X is the cardiac muscle. It contracts and relaxes to cause the heart to beat and pump blood to the cells. Alright, so if you look at tissue X here, it has the stripes or the striations or the bands. So it's either skeletal muscle or cardiac muscle. But there are branches here, okay, the branching cells. So this shows that it is not skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle do not have the branches like this. It is the cardiac muscle which have branches, right, like this, that connect the muscle fibers together. So the answer is that tissue X is cardiac muscle, and it contracts and relaxes to cause the heart to beat and pump blood to the cells. That's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing. I hope that the lesson has been helpful to you, and please do remember the word economy, which is the short form for the 4 types of human tissues or animal tissues. Please do share, like, and subscribe if my channel has been helpful to you. So till we meet again, all the best and bye for now.